You grow up in Sinaloa. Your mother cleans houses for families who don't learn her name. Your father left before you could remember his face. The only thing he left behind is a chemistry textbook on a shelf in the closet. You open it when you're 9. You don't understand a word. You read it anyway. By 12, you're teaching yourself molecular structures from that book the way other kids memorize soccer stats. You get a scholarship to the state university. Chemistry. You're the only kid from your colonia who's ever set foot on a campus. You're good, not brilliant, but disciplined in a way that makes professors uncomfortable because it reminds them of hunger. You graduate near the top. You apply to pharmaceutical companies, biotech firms, research labs. You get interviews. You don't get callbacks. Your address. Your last name. The accent you can't fully sand down. The jobs go to kids whose fathers golf with the hiring managers. You move back home with a degree that costs more than your mother's house and a resume nobody opens. You're stocking shelves at a hardware store when a man named Lalo walks in. He doesn't buy anything. He watches you for a while. Then he asks if you're the kid who went to university for chemistry. In a town this small, everyone knows everyone's business. He says he knows someone who needs a chemist. Pays well. Cash. He doesn't say what it's for. He doesn't need to. You know what a chemist does in Sinaloa when the job pays cash and the employer doesn't have a website. You tell him no. You go home. You eat rice and beans with your mother. She coughs through dinner. She's been coughing for months. The clinic wants tests she can't afford. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling running the math. Your hardware store check barely covers food. The tests cost 3 months of your salary. Treatment costs a year you don't have. Lalo comes back the following week. Same aisle. Same question. You tell him you want to meet the employer first. He drives you to a ranch 40 minutes outside town. Clean property. Dogs. A man named Cardenas is sitting under a mesquite tree drinking horchata. He's maybe 50. Calm. Speaks softly. Doesn't look like what you expected. He asks about your degree. Your GPA. What you know about organic synthesis. It's a job interview. He's reading your transcript like an HR manager. He explains the position. You'd be cooking methamphetamine. The operation currently uses a crude reduction method. The product is inconsistent. Purity around 70%. He wants 95. He wants someone who understands the chemistry, not just the recipe. He offers you $5,000 a month. Your hardware store pays $400. He sees you doing the math. He doesn't rush you. He just sips his horchata and waits. You start the following Monday. They drive you blindfolded to a location in the Sierra. When the blindfold comes off, you're standing in a concrete building with no windows. Inside, it's a mess. Plastic buckets, garden hoses, propane burners on dirt floors. The smell hits you like a wall. Ammonia, solvent, rotten eggs. 2 men are standing over a cook that looks like a middle school science experiment gone wrong. This is the operation you're supposed to fix. You almost laugh. Almost. You spend the first week not cooking. You inventory. You test the precursors. You measure contamination levels. You sketch a floor plan on the back of a feed bag. You write a list of equipment you need. Proper glassware. A reflux condenser. A rotary evaporator. Accurate scales. pH meters. Ventilation. Cardenas reads the list. Doesn't blink at the cost. A truck arrives 4 days later with everything on it. You realize you just submitted a purchase order, and it got approved faster than any university lab grant you ever applied for. The cartel has better procurement than the Mexican education system. You rebuild the lab from scratch. You design a synthesis route using pseudoephedrine reduction with hydroiodic acid and red phosphorus. Clean. Controlled. Repeatable. Your first batch tests at 96.2% purity. Cardenas holds the sample bag up to the light like a jeweler examining a diamond. He doesn't say good job. He says make more. You make more. Within 2 months, you've trained 2 assistants, former farm workers. They can't spell methamphetamine, but they can follow instructions. You teach them the way your professors taught you. Step by step. Measure twice. Temperature matters. Contamination kills yield. One of them, a kid named Pulido, maybe 19, asks you one night why the stuff has to be so pure. You tell him purity means consistency. Consistency means repeat customers. Repeat customers mean revenue. You're describing addiction economics, and you frame it like a business lecture. He nods like it makes sense. It does make sense. That's the problem. Production scales. 1 lab becomes 2. 2 becomes 4. Cardenas assigns you a driver, a bodyguard, and a burner phone that changes every 2 weeks. You visit each lab on a rotation. You quality test every batch. You reject anything below 94%. The cooks learn fast that failing your inspection means losing their bonus. You've created a quality control system for poison. You've built a manufacturing process with standards and metrics and accountability. Everything your degree trained you to do, just applied to the wrong product. The money changes things. Your mother gets her tests. Lung infection. Treatable. You pay for the antibiotics. You pay off the house. You buy her a new stove. She asks where the money comes from. You tell her you got a job at a pharmaceutical company in Guadalajara. She believes it because she wants to. You visit every 2 weeks. You bring groceries. She makes you dinner. You sit at the table where you grew up and eat with hands that cooked 60 kilos of methamphetamine that week. She tells you she's proud. You chew slowly so you don't have to respond. 6 months in. Cardenas introduces you to the distribution side. Not because you asked. Because he wants you to understand the full supply chain. He says a cook who understands the market makes better product. He drives you to a warehouse where your product gets cut, packaged, and loaded into vehicles with hidden compartments. You see the volume for the first time. What leaves your labs in bags leaves this warehouse in tons. Your 4 labs are a single node in a network that stretches from Sinaloa to Chicago. You do the math on the spot. Street value of your monthly output is roughly $12 million. You make $5,000. You're the most underpaid employee in the organization by a factor you can't calculate without feeling sick. You ask Cardenas for a raise. He smiles. He gives you $8,000 a month and a truck. He also gives you a piece of information you didn't ask for. He tells you about the last cook. Good chemist, reliable, got greedy. Started skimming precursors and selling product on the side. They found him in a barrel of acid in the same lab where he used to work. Cardenas tells you this story over lunch. He's eating a torta. He doesn't change his tone between describing the food and describing the barrel. You understand the message. The raise is real. So is the barrel. A new problem arrives. The pseudoephedrine supply gets choked. Federal crackdown on pharmacy sales. Your precursor pipeline dries up in 2 weeks. Cardenas doesn't panic. He asks you for a solution. You spend 3 days in the lab working through alternative synthesis routes. You land on P2P. Phenylastone-based. Harder to cook. More toxic. More steps. But the precursors are industrial chemicals. Paint thinner. Benzaldehyde. Nitroethane. Things you can buy in bulk from legitimate chemical suppliers with fake company paperwork. You present the new route to Cardenas like a product development pitch. He listens. He nods. He asks how long to retool the labs. You say 2 weeks. He gives you 10 days. You retool. The P2P method produces a racemic mixture. Both left-handed and right-handed molecules. Only one gets you high. The other is dead weight. Your purity numbers look great on paper, but the effective potency is lower. Users notice. Cardenas notices. You solve it with a reductive amination tweak and a chiral resolution step that separates the isomers. 3 extra hours per batch. But the product comes back to 96% effective purity. Cardenas starts calling you El Profesor. You don't like the nickname. It sticks anyway. You've been cooking for a year when you see the other side of the product for the first time. Cardenas sends you to Tijuana to consult on a lab that's having contamination problems. On the drive through the city, your driver takes a wrong turn through a neighborhood called Zona Norte. You see them, sitting on curbs, standing in doorways, lying on cardboard. Hundreds of people, skin and bone, sores on their faces, eyes that don't track. A woman who can't be older than 25 is scratching her arms raw in front of a pharmacy that has bars on the windows just like your mother's. You look at her, and you see the molecular structure of what you cooked sitting in her bloodstream. You designed that molecule for maximum receptor binding. You optimized it for potency. You quality tested it for consistency. And here it is, working exactly as intended. Your driver notices you staring. He says, "Don't think about it. They'd be using something anyway." You've heard that before. You've said it before. It sounds different on this street. You fix the Tijuana lab. You don't take the wrong turn on the way back. Year 2. You're running 8 labs, 40 employees. Monthly output that you stopped calculating because the numbers make your hands shake. You have a system. Every lab has a lead cook you trained personally. You visit each one weekly. You test randomly. You rotate precursor suppliers to avoid pattern detection. You keep no records. Everything is in your head. Formulas, temperatures, ratios, supplier contacts, lab locations. You are the database. That makes you valuable. It also makes you a liability. Cardenas gets arrested, not by local police. DEA, joint operation. Wiretaps, informants. The news plays on the TV at a taqueria while you're eating breakfast. You watch his face on the screen. The man who drinks horchata under a mesquite tree is now in handcuffs being walked to a helicopter. You put your fork down. Your phone rings within the hour. It's Cardenas's lieutenant, a man named Rodrigo. Younger, louder. He tells you nothing changes. Production continues. You answer to him now. Everything changes. Rodrigo doesn't understand the chemistry. He doesn't care about purity. He cares about volume. He wants you to cut the product with MSM to stretch output. You explain that cutting reduces quality. Reduced quality loses premium buyers. He tells you to shut up and cook. You cut the product. Purity drops to 80%. The premium buyers in California and Arizona switch suppliers within a month. Rodrigo blames you. You show him the numbers. He doesn't read numbers. He reads loyalty. And you just looked disloyal. 2 of your lab leads disappear in the same week. No explanation. Rodrigo assigns replacements. They're not chemists. They're soldiers who can follow a recipe card. One of them nearly blows up a lab by heating a solvent in a sealed container. You arrive to find the building evacuated and the kids standing outside with singed eyebrows asking what went wrong. You explain thermodynamics to a man holding an assault rifle. This is your life now. Pulido, the 19-year-old you trained on day 1, comes to you at night. He's scared. He says Rodrigo is cleaning house. Anyone connected to Cardenas is a loose end. He says he heard your name mentioned in a meeting, not as a person, as a problem to be solved. He tells you this, and then he asks you what to do. He's 21 now. He still asks you questions like you're his professor. You don't have an answer. You tell him to be careful. You think about running. You have money buried in 3 locations, enough to disappear. But your mother is in Sinaloa. Your labs are in your head. And Rodrigo knows both of those things. The DEA contacts you through a back channel you didn't know existed. A message left at a motel front desk. Simple. We know who you are. We know what you make. We can offer protection. Call this number. You hold the piece of paper for 2 days. You think about the barrel. You think about your mother's cough. You think about the woman in Zona Norte scratching her arms. You think about Pulido asking you what to do. You call the number. The agent on the other end doesn't waste time. He tells you what they want. Lab locations, precursor supply chains, distribution routes, Rodrigo's communication patterns. He tells you what they'll give you. Immunity, Relocation. New identity. Your mother included. He tells you how long. 3 months of cooperation. Then extraction. You agree. 3 months of cooking meth for a cartel while feeding coordinates to the people who will shut it down. You are simultaneously the manufacturer and the recall notice. The raids come on a Thursday before dawn. All 8 labs hit simultaneously. 43 arrests, 900 kilos of product seized, $14 million in cash. Rodrigo is taken at a safe house in Mazatlan. He's in handcuffs on the news by noon. You watch from the back of a federal vehicle already crossing the border. They put you in a town in New Mexico. Flat, dry, quiet. A rented apartment near a community college. The DEA gives you paperwork for a job as a lab technician at a water treatment plant. You test pH levels and chlorine concentrations. You use the same instruments you use to test methamphetamine purity. The irony doesn't hit you. It just sits there like a rock in your shoe that you stop noticing. Your mother is 2 towns over. New name, new house. You visit on Sundays. She makes dinner. She still coughs sometimes. She asks about your work. You tell her water treatment. She nods. She says it sounds important. She says she's proud. You chew slowly. Pulido didn't make it out. You learn this 6 months later from a news article about cartel violence in the Sierra. No names, just a number. 14 bodies found in a mass grave near an abandoned building. The building matches the description of Lab 4, the one Pulido ran. You read the article twice. You close the laptop. You go to work. You test the water. The pH is 7.2. Within range. You log it and move on. Some nights you sit at your kitchen table with a notebook and a pencil. You draw molecular structures, not meth, just structures. Caffeine, aspirin, serotonin. The shapes calm you down the way music calms other people. You fill notebooks with them. Hundreds of pages of molecules that don't kill anyone. You think about the chemistry textbook your father left on the shelf. You wonder if he knew what it would lead to. You wonder if a different book would have sent you down a different road. History, literature, anything. But he left the chemistry book, and you opened it. And here you are, testing water in a town nobody visits, drawing molecules at a kitchen table, carrying a formula in your head that's worth more than everything you'll ever own. The cartel doesn't run on violence. Violence is just overhead. It runs on chemistry. Every empire needs a builder. Someone quiet. Someone smart. Someone who can turn powder into money and money into power. The guys with the guns get the headlines. The cook gets a rented apartment and a water treatment job and a notebook full of molecules that don't hurt anyone anymore. That's a wrap for today. This story is fiction, but somewhere right now, a chemistry student with a perfect GPA is stocking shelves because nobody returned his calls. And a man just walked into the store who doesn't need to buy anything. If this one made you think, drop a comment. Subscribe for more. See you in the next one.